Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to teach you the number one hack, the number one secret, the number one tool that I've used to get the most out of what I'm studying, when I'm learning things. My name is Rob Witt. I have helped my clients generate over $300 million in sales, and I currently manage a team of over 30 people. I've learned a lot about sales and leadership, specifically management, accountability, to grow and scale companies, organizations, businesses, and I want to teach you one of the things that I have found to be the number one most successful tool. So I currently read on average about one book per week. I mostly do audiobooks. I do some physical books. I read a lot of different books. This is one thing I'm actually listening to on audiobook right now. Hormozi, I'm a big fan of his. This is just a shelf of some of the books that I've read. I do read a wide variety of topics. I do prefer business and sales and marketing type books. I like reading biographies, all different kinds of things. And I'm always looking for number one thing. This is the secret I'm going to tell you. It's the first 1 minute of the video. When you're reading something, when you're studying something, even if it's a fiction book, figure out how can you use that information. Now, that might seem crazy to you, especially if I'm adding fiction into the mix. But I'm telling you, there's something to be learned from every single experience. You can always learn something new. You have to expand your mind into how can I take this information and how can I get the most value out of it to do something, to apply this, to use this in my life, even if all it's doing is modifying the way you're thinking. Again, I've read hundreds, probably thousands of books. I haven't really kept a good record of it. I wish I had. But as I'm reading things, and some things I'll read multiple times, some books are so good that I'll revisit them periodically. Some people recommend reading them in physical book and audiobook. I like audiobooks a lot because I'm often doing things and I can listen to them while I'm driving or I'm doing dishes or whatever it is. That's a lot of how I got through content. But I'm always trying to figure out, well, if the author is telling me this thing was successful, there must be something that I can learn to use to my life. Even if I'm learning something about a totally different type of business, different types of leads, different types of clients, staff from different parts of the world. I've managed very international teams. Currently, I have employees in 3 different countries. Some of them I've never met before in person, probably never will, to be totally honest. But figuring out how to manage those relationships is super, super key. And I'm going to tell you just a bunch of examples of how this has been useful to me. And hopefully, in showing you how I use this, it'll help you to get the most value out of that. Because I can very easily say, well, just try to use it. There you go, end of video, that's it. And if that's all you want to get out of the video, that's totally fine. But let me tell you how I've used this. So as an example, even in the most craziest thing that you can think of that probably has no application to life or business at all, fiction novels. I like a lot of sci-fi, I read fantasy sometimes, I've read thrillers, I've read all kinds of things. But in reading those types of books, the author has experience about different kinds of people. And so when you're learning about the way that different people think, different people operate, and really good authors can do this really, really well. They'll put you in the shoes of a totally different character that may have nothing to do with you or your life. And when you understand those kinds of people, it helps you to understand other people in your actual life, in real life. So as an example, you might be reading about another culture, even if it's a completely, I told you I read sci-fi, it could be a total sci-fi culture, but the author was Earth based. So he's often basing it off of some earlier culture. For, as an example, Dune is very famously based off of some of the Arabic and I believe Muslim kind of mysticism and that kind of thing. I'm not totally sure about the religion, but definitely the sort of desert culture, that kind of thing. The author, Frank Hubert, I'm not totally sure. Anyway, but he definitely studied those cultures, and he does. If you look into his life, he definitely has that experience, that backing, and so you can connect that into, well, so how can I take this that is a different experience, but it helps me to have a better understanding of different kinds of people. I've lived and worked in Japan. I've lived and worked in Indonesia, in Samoa. I've worked with in South Africa, and I've worked with in Europe with different organizations and so forth. I'm obviously based in the U.S. I've lived in several different U.S. cities, different states. Different kinds of people are different, and the more you can understand them, the better you can connect with them, and the better you're able to get across what you're trying to get across. Another really, really good example is when you're learning sales and you're learning marketing, specifically sales, really. Sales is really just boiled down to a method of how do I communicate my ideas to somebody else and understand why they might not like this idea and why they may reject it. In sales, they call it objections, and convince them to come around to my way of thinking. So you may, and it's very easy to say, oh, well, buy my service, buy my product, whatever it is. And that's just like the straight sales. And people often think of sales as being like kind of used car salesman-y or this kind of thing. But the reality is that you can apply that same principle to any area of your life. Let's just say you come home from work and your husband or wife had a bad day and they're angry at you, or they're angry or whatever. Okay, good. Well, your desired outcome isn't buy my car or buy my service or sign up for my service, but your desired outcome is how do I make this person happy? How do I raise their emotional state, and how do I handle whatever this is? So doing that, listening, active listening, understanding what those situations are, understanding what the problem is, and then coming up with actual solutions. All of that can help you. It's the exact same skill set. What you're selling is not a monetary value. What you're selling in this case is, well, let's have a harmonious night, despite the fact that we had a crap day. So that's if you're so narrow-minded in your thinking, if you're so focused on this is the only way this can apply, then you will miss the broader picture. You'll miss the broader lesson. And the true magic in learning, the real true magic in learning, is stitching all these things together. And you take a little bit of this, and this impacts you. Take a little bit of that, and that impacts you. And this, and soon you have 1,000 different things that lead to a very well-rounded and well-educated person in a variety of domains that they can apply most properly and most effectively to address a wide range of problems. You never really know what's going to come at you. And if you're only able to handle one problem with one solution, then really all you are is a hammer. And that may be effective, and there are some domains where possibly that's the best thing to do. But in general, especially in business, especially in entrepreneurship, especially in small businesses, you really need to understand an entire breadth of types of people, of operations, of solutions. One of the things that I really like doing is reading biographies of successful business people, entrepreneurs, billionaires specifically. Autobiographies, if you can get them. If not, definitely biographies. If they're writing in their own words, that's obviously the best in most cases. But if somebody else is studying their life and writing about that, that can also be very effective. Warren Buffett has a really good biography called Snowball, I believe it is. It's very long. It's a fantastic read. Very interesting to go through the man's life and figure out how did he achieve the success he did. Success does leave clues, and so I heard that from Hormozi, I think, first, but I'm not sure who invented that phrase. That's the one I can make sure I give full credit to where credit's due. But if you're studying these people and you may be learning about like the Shoe Dog, the Nike book, about the evolution of Nike. If you understand what that man went through, well, how can I use that in my business? And how can I realize that how he connects his business is now most effective, or how can I most effectively apply that now? I was talking to a guy recently, and I was recommending that he actually use the principles in that book. Now, that book was written about a business that was started in the 70s, I believe, and started as a running shoe company, of all things. It was not a basketball shoe company or anything else. It was a running shoe company specifically. And he made the first shoes by pouring plastic onto a waffle iron, and he ruined the waffle iron. It's a very famous story, at least in this world. But he was a runner. He was a long-distance runner. I was also a long-distance runner, so I have empathy for that. And he was trying to design shoes for runners. And at that point in time, there was only a couple main competitors in the market, and he was trying to crack into this market. And he literally would get the shoes made in Asia. At that point, I think it was Japan or South Korea or somewhere, I'm not totally sure. But he was going to Asia, getting them made, coming back here, and he was driving around to all these track races and selling shoes out of the trunk of his car to, I guess, mostly high school students. I forget the exact details of that part of the book, but it doesn't really matter. But my point is that he found an inroads into one specific niche, and then as it grew and grew and grew and grew and grew, he made sponsorships and he hired athletes and these kind of things, and he was able to take that one tiny wedge and he wedged it in, and he made a bigger market, and then he expanded into different types of shoes, and famously, sponsored Michael Jordan and so forth, and hired him as a spokesperson, and the rest is history. But now it's a massive brand, but it started off with that one point, and I was telling this guy the story. It's like, he's launching his brand. Well, let's do the same thing And we need to realize that focus on one niche that we really understand, that we're personally connected to, and then we can grow from there. But if you just read it as like, oh, that was an interesting story, it doesn't apply to me, not my life, you'll lose 99% of the benefit. So no matter what you're reading, what you're observing in life, be an active observer, be someone engaged in the content, and always watch, is this something that I can learn from, and how can I learn from it? Because I do think that everything you can learn from something. Hopefully you're not watching totally trash content. I don't know what you can learn from Desperate Housewives of Atlanta or whatever it is. Maybe just that people can be crazy, and so you try to figure out not to make them crazy. But that's something that I think that might help you guys. So that's something that I've used successfully. Again, when you're studying something, when you're reading anything, even if it's fantasy or fiction, made up stories or whatever it is, it's not trash necessarily. You're be educated about people. And when you're reading business books that may be in different fields or different things, figure out, how can I use this in my career, in my business, in my life to solve my problems so I can solve my problems and better my relationships. Hope that helps, guys. That if that was useful for you, please subscribe. I am trying to grow the channel, so thank you very much. I'll see you in the next one.